In today's show, the rumors are swirling. It sounds like CJ McCollum's days in Portland are numbered. Where might the Blazers shooting guard be headed? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond, listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts. And now also on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. Also, thanks for making Locked On Blazers your first listen every single day. It's free on all platforms, coming at you 5 days a week, every single weekday. Make it a part of daily routine. Listen to me every single day right here, and then tell your friends to do the same. In today's episode, it's rumor season. We've been talking trades all week, and nothing's going to change here. There are a whole bunch of signs pointing to CJ McCollum getting traded. We'll break down the rumors, what we've heard, who's reported what might happen. We'll talk about what a good CJ trade looks like. And we'll close the show talking a little bit about the Norman Powell trade versus the Caris LeVert trade. The Blazers got seemingly a worse return. We'll talk about why that happened in sort of the context of trade season. But let's start with the rumors. Listen, it's all indications are CJ McCollum is going to be traded ahead of the deadline. It really, and quite frankly, y'all, I'm recording this after 9 p.m. on Monday, February 7th. This is Tuesday, February 8th show. And I waited this late at night because I thought it could already happen, just like sort of the way the rumors are happening and heating up and reporting is coming out about the Trailblazers. I am a little worried that by the time you listen to this, dear listener, a trade could have already happened. So we will press forward. As of right now, CJ McCollum's on the team. The Blazers haven't made any other trade except for the Norman Powell and Robert Covington deal. But there's a lot of indicators that this is happening. There seems to be a lot of momentum, at least in the reporting world, from my vantage point. Marc Stein, who has a Substack where he's an independent reporter, you can report it, or you can subscribe to Marc Stein Substack, a longtime NBA reporter and someone who's got the goods, says that the New Orleans Pelicans and New York Knicks are both interested in CJ McCollum. And Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype says that add the Atlanta Hawks, add a name in there that's also interested in CJ McCollum. All three of those teams contacting the Blazers about their veteran two guard. And on ESPN, on their trade show, Adrian Wojnarowski said nothing short of the Blazers will look very different after the trade deadline. That isn't a specific thing, but Woj doesn't put that out there unless it's the real deal Holyfield. I mean, it's unless either rival teams know it or the Blazers want that message out there. Like it's out there. I trust Woj when he goes on those ESPN, makes those ESPN appearances. That's the real deal. That is a reporter that I trust. Reports get out for different reasons. That's a whole nother thing, but if Woj says the Blazers are going to look very different, that means a lot of trades are coming, or at least a big one. And a big one is going to be CJ McCollum. It could be others, like there certainly could be others, but the big one, the one that would sort of really push the new era forward, would be after 6 years of the Damian CJ pairing, the Blazers finally split them up. And Joe Cronin, with the interim tag still on, is the one to do it. So let's look at some of those deals. In Marc Stein's reporting, Stein indicated that obviously Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram wouldn't be available. Those never were names that are going to be available in a CJ McCollum trade, but Herb Jones and Jonas Valanciunas wouldn't be available either. Not a surprise that Herb Jones wouldn't be included. Dude looks like he could be like an all defense type performer, or at least like competitive in the running. If they had an all defense third team, you book it Herb Jones on there, like a really good young defender, albeit a little bit older because he spent 4 years in college, but someone who looks like a really good NBA player as a rookie in the second round. Teams don't trade those guys. They don't trade those guys for 30-year-olds on big contracts. You hold on to those players tightly as possible because they're good and cheap. So Herb Jones was never going to be traded. I think it's somewhat surprising that Jonas Valanciunas is like, they're holding on to him. He's on a good contract. He's a good basketball player. not borderline all-star, but like numbers where he was in the conversation where some people were like, what do you do with JV? So it's everyone else on the Pelicans roster. It's Josh Hart and Thomas Satoransky and Jackson Hayes and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and maybe Trey Murphy. It's those names. And if you're listening to the show regularly, last week I had Jake Madison on here, and he had put together a potential trade package, like a theoretical trade package, and it was Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Jackson Hayes, and a couple first-round picks. I still think that is really close to a deal if it's the Pelicans. I would guess maybe one pick, not two, but like that seems that the idea that Jake laid out, which includes Jackson Hayes and includes Josh Hart and the expiring contract of Thomas Satoransky, that is like that to me sounds about right for CJ. If it's the Knicks, it's probably going to be centered around Julius Randle. Like you can't make it happen with the young guys. Like RJ Barrett to me is a lot more appealing than Julius Randle, but it's hard to. CJ McCollum makes $30 million a year. It's hard to get a deal that works centered around RJ Barrett and to get the money right. It just doesn't seem likely. To be totally clear, I'm not a big Julius Randle guy. Like, he was really good last year, and a lefty who can pass is always going to be someone who's like near and dear to my heart, just style of player. But I don't find Julius Randle that appealing. I'm not sure that he's like he's like a four with defensive limitations he did really shoot it well last year, but he's prone to some really cold shooting spells, some just bad shooting decisions that he kind of seemed like he'd gotten rid of, but he's back there again, and some lethargy with the Knicks. I think he's just in a bad mood in New York and needs to be freed. So maybe in Portland he would be in a better spot, but I'm not really a Julius Randle guy. I think I'm in favor of it just because I don't want to see Damian CJ on the roster again next fall. Like 6 years was enough. Let's try anything different here in Portland. But like, if you're asking me, I'm not really, I would say I'm a light Julius Randle doubter. That's just me I want to be honest with you straight up about what I feel about his game. I don't love the Pelicans package either. It doesn't do it for me. But I do think because the Pelicans have recently made trades for Anthony Davis, where they got a surplus of picks from the Lakers, and Drew Holiday, where they got a surplus of picks back from the Bucks, they seem like the most likely team to deal. Like they have more sellable, dealable assets. I do think Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, and Jackson Hayes is underwhelming for what you would have maybe at one point thought of a deal for CJ McCollum. But if that's what you get back, I don't think you. If you end up with two picks out of the CJ trade, you can't be too mad. Although a deal centered around Josh Hart, who is a good role player, is not exactly what you would want. So let's talk about what you would want. Like those are the real. Atlanta's the same thing. I can't really see a realistic deal that truly works. It would be centered around the contract of Danilo Gallinari. That doesn't do it for me. I'm just ignoring the Hawks because I think they have bad enough parts, and like they're not going to trade DeAndre Hunter, and they're probably not going to trade John Collins for CJ McCollum. So like. No, like if they do trade John Collins, let's talk about it. I'm into that deal, but it's probably centered around Danilo Gallinari's money, and no, thank you. So it's really, you're looking at Knicks and Pels, and I think the Pels make more sense as a trade partner just because they have picks. But let's talk about what you want. Like, what do you want in a theoretical CJ McCollum trade? Because it could happen. Hell, it could happen by the time you listen to this. This could be old news, but like it could happen very near future. What does a good trade look like for the Blazers? This we'll do in the second segment. But first, let me tell you about TurboTax. People think unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, but for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. We all have unique lives. So why don't you just get some help solving those unique lives that lead to unique tax problems? Because TurboTax has experts who can answer your tax questions, walk you through the whole process, or do your taxes from start to finish. They help you get every deduction you deserve, no matter your unique situation. And you can talk to TurboTax Live experts through your phone or your computer without leaving your house. TurboTax Live experts are here to help you however you need it. So if you need an extra hand or to hand off your taxes to them, they'll do it. The TurboTax Live experts, they know that an interesting life can mean a greater refund. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. You do your thing. They've got your taxes. Intuit TurboTax Live. All right. So what do you want from a CJ McCollum trade? It's happening, could be New Orleans, could be New York, could conceivably be Atlanta, but I don't think so. Maybe. Seems like it's going to be the Knicks or the Pels. Seems like it's going to be the Pels just based on package. But it could be the Knicks. It could be Julius Randle. I don't mean to poo-poo it. I'm not even reporting anything. I'm just using my logic brain. I encourage you to do the same. You don't need to fake the funk. You can think about this with your smart brain, dear Blazer fan, and more picks, more young players. That's more appealing to the Blazers. But what would they want in a CJ McCollum trade? What would they want? What would they want? Well, at one point, they would have wanted an all-star in return. I think that's probably out the door. Julius Randle was an all-star last year. John Collins probably has all-star potential. Sure. I don't think the Hawks trade is going to happen. Danilo Gallinari was a very good player for the previous decades, a little bit older, a little bit long in the tooth for the Rooster. But yeah, you would want an all-star at one point. At one point, that would have been the ask, right? It's like a borderline all-star to replace this borderline all-star. And I think the Blazers' asking price for CJ McCollum is probably pretty high, just because he's their second best player. He probably doesn't project as their second best player moving forward because of Anthony Simons' growth. But like all of CJ's tenure, he's been a better player than Ant. It's only in the last this calendar year, what is that? 38 days as I'm recording this, where you could say like, oh no, Anthony Simons is like legitimately better than CJ, and you can see it right in front of you. You could say Anthony Simons will be better for a long time, but like prior to the previous 38 days, CJ has been pretty clearly the Blazers' second best player. There's been times when Nurk has been better, but for my money, CJ's consistency and offense's value over defense, CJ's been the second best player. So you could imagine that the Blazers' asking price would be relatively high. It would be like, give us somebody back who could be our second best player. Tough needle to thread for CJ's price and his age. He's got 2 years and over $60 million remaining in his contract, making north of $30 million in each of the next 2 seasons. He's 30 years old. He's pretty good. Like that he's pretty good, but on a team with Damian Lillard, he's been clearly a strange fit despite pretty consistent, successful seasons that they've had. And a team that's going to commit to Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons is kind of untenable to keep him on the roster, in my opinion. So if this is the move, and it sounds like a lot of indicators are that it is, then you've got to ask yourself, what do you want? And I think it has changed from all-star to like suitable starter at the forward spots. You want someone who, if you trade for CJ McCollum, this dude can start at the 3, this dude can start at the 4, either one of those, right? Like that's who you want. The Blazers' first trade did not result in that. They traded Norman Powell, who I view as like a really solid starting player in the league. He's a 2, miscast as a 3, but like Blazers didn't get back anyone who you could say will be a solid starter. Maybe you believe Keon Johnson will develop into that. Maybe you're talking yourself into Justice Winslow. Maybe you're a big Eric Bledsoe believer, but like none of those folks, those are, with all due respect, like flotsam and a young guy is what it is. Like a flotsam and a young guy in a second round pick. You can't do that twice. If you do that twice, you're tearing it down. We'll see what they get back for CJ McCollum. There might be some indicators that they're tearing it down anyways, but you want a suitable starter at one of the forward spots. That has to be the basic asking price. That's why there's the appeal of Julius Randle, the appeal of conceivably John Collins. Keep throwing that name out there, but I do not think that that's going to happen. I think that's like a less than 1% chance, but it's the money works. The money works is why I'm saying that. Like you could get close to there with his money, but I think it would be Danilo Gallinari's money, and that does not do the Blazers anything. So it's like a suitable starter at the forward spots. That's your first asking price, and then it's picks, but it's not distant picks. Like if the Blazers are trying to accomplish their twin goals of being one of the bottom teams in the league this season, but good again in the fall, they need picks in the 2022 draft. Conceivably, you could convince me that picks in the 2023 draft are valuable and you could trade them and maneuver and make it happen this summer. But if I'm asking for stuff for CJ McCollum, I want a surefire starter. Doesn't even have to be a really good player, but someone who could for sure start on, say, 28 of the 30 teams in the league, and a 2022 pick. I want a first for CJ McCollum. Are you going to get a first round pick for CJ McCollum? Probably from the Pelicans, just because they have a lot to give away, but or a surplus, I should say, to give away. Maybe not a lot. They're not OKC, but 2 seems like a lot. If the Blazers get 2 firsts back from CJ McCollum, you call that a massive win. It might be a little disappointing because you're thinking about the future, not the present. But like if you flip CJ for 2 firsts, you did a good job. Like hard to argue with that one. But if you don't get a suitable starting level forward, and Josh Hart is a wing, he can play 3, but that's not ideal, but it gets you closer. I like Josh Hart. Then like he's legitimately good. He's just 6'5". He's probably more 2 than 3, but you can get away with more minutes of him at the 3 because of the way he plays and the way he rebounds. You want more length if you're really building around Damian Lillard, but you'll get closer with that plan. I think you get close to what you'd ask for if it's Jackson Hayes, who's looked better over the last 10 or 12 days than quite frankly he's ever has in his career. I'm not really a Jackson Hayes believer, but I watched the last 2 Jackson Hayes games. One of them, he straight up did not miss a shot, went 9 for 9. And then against the Rockets, he showed all of the things he can do. Took it, dribbled coast to coast 80 feet from, foul line to the rim and got fouled. He's got some promise. He's not my guy, but he could be your guy, and I would believe it. So I talked to a friend who's a big Pelicans fan, and that friend was telling me hard on Jackson Hayes. Maybe I'm wrong. In any case, the asking price for CJ McCollum has to be that a suitable starter at forward and a first round pick in the near term. A 2025 first round pick does you no good. That 2025 second round pick from the Pistons might end up being valuable, but it doesn't really do this iteration of the Blazers well, like serve them in any way. It's like that player that they take in the 2025 draft will be lucky to play with Anthony Simons. That's like and Nazir Little. That's basically the only 2 dudes on the roster right now that 2025 second round pick will play with. You want picks that can be part of this next step. So 2022 and maybe 2023, but not much further, unless you're tearing it down. If you're tearing it down, and this is like the CJ's the beginning, and you're going to trade Dame this summer, yada, 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 then the calculation gets different. But if your plan is this twin plan to be good, bad now and good in October, you need to make selections in the 2022 draft or be able to deal those picks immediately to upgrade the roster. That is just how this one is going to work. That's what I'd want in a CJ trade. Suitable starting forward and first round picks that come up quick. We'll see if they get it. We'll see if they trade CJ. I really think they will. This isn't me reporting anything. This is me reading the tea leaves. I'm a good tea leaves reader. I'm going to publish this one right away because I think a CJ trade could happen very, very, very soon. I think it's real. I think that is real. What I want to talk about to close the show is a recent Blazer trade, the Norman Powell, Robert Covington trade, which was admittedly a very disappointing return, particularly after the Pacers made a trade for a similarly talented player in Caris LeVert. Let's talk about the differences in those 2 trade packages and why the Blazers found themselves where they did in the final segment to close the show. But first, let me tell you about betonline.net. More odds, more lines, more props than ever before. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. It's a great betting week in the United States or in North America or in anywhere that you care about American football. The Super Bowl is this weekend. It's literally the biggest betting event of the year. There's no better time than to go to betonline.net where they got everything Super Bowl related. But even if you don't want to bet on that big old game, they got college hoops, they got pro hoops, they got soccer, they got NHL, they got all the Olympic events, they got combat sports. So why not take advantage of this right now? Go to betonline.net. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard, still Mike Richmond, still listening to Locked On Blazers. Talk CJ McCollum trade stuff. Let's talk about a trade that already happened. Norman Powell and Robert Covington went to the LA Clippers. The Blazers got back Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, a 2025 second-round pick, and the 21st pick in the 2021 NBA draft, Keon Johnson, a 6'5" super athlete out of Tennessee. This was a deal that at the time it looks like, oh, what the hell is this? And now we're a few days later, and I still feel the same way. Like, what the hell is this? But I think there's some clarity. And I want to point to an article that John Hollinger wrote in The Athletic. It published today on Monday, February 7th in The Athletic, where he discussed the trade that the Pacers and the Cavaliers completed. That deal sent 20 point per game scorer, 19 and some change point per game wing, 2 guard, Caris LeVert, and a second rounder to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for the expiring contract of Ricky Rubio, a first round pick, and a second round pick. That is just a straight up better haul. First of all, you get out from under the money. You don't have Eric Bledsoe's semi-expiring contracts, partially guaranteed contract to deal with and pay off next season. You get out from that under the money immediately. You get a real first-round pick to trade into the future, and you get a second-round pick, a near-term second-rounder. Like that's the Pacers got a better haul. For my money, Norman Powell is pretty similar to Caris LeVert. I probably like Norm a little bit more, but if you like Caris LeVert a little bit more because he can dribble, like a little better ball handler, then sure. Like, I think they're really comparable players. So I think looking at this trade, you say like Norman Rocco got you less than Caris LeVert on his own. And I think there's one major reason to look at, and this is what Hollinger highlighted in his piece in The Athletic, was that you're trading contracts. And Norman Powell's contract, which has 4 years and more than $75 million, I think it's like $76.4 million remaining after this season, but 4 for 76 left after this season, is just so unappealing for so many teams because of the years out. LeVert is under contract through this season and next season, and then you get to make the decision. With the way contracts work in the NBA and the way money works in the league, teams are operating on small margins, and they're thinking about deep into the future, and committing that much money to Norman Powell made him less appealing on the market. That contract just drove down Norm's appeal. The way I had phrased this on the podcast, and John Hollinger, who writes for The Athletic, senior writer for The Athletic, he spent 7 years as the president of basketball operations or vice president of basketball operations, some basketball operations title, like running the Memphis's team. Like, he has a lot of front office experience in the league that I've spent 7 years covering the Blazers in various capacities. It ain't the same thing. Although we did both start working at OregonLive.com back in the day. So similar start to our careers. But in any case, enough. Shout out to OLive. Like the phrasing I had been using was that to find a suitor for Norman Powell, they were going to want a lot of Norman Powell. It's going to be a lot of Norman Powell. And that was kind of the language I was using to say, like, yeah, it's a big commitment. 4 years is a big commitment. But Hollinger just kind of spells out, like, NBA front offices, they want 2 years, but 4 is a long time. The longest contract you can sign to someone off of your team is 4 years. The longest, like, re-signing you can make is 5 years. The Blazers signed Norman Powell to as long a contract as he could possibly get. In some ways, I believe that was leverage from what Powell's offseason looked like. If the Blazers lost Powell, they weren't going to have any cap room or cap space to sign anyone else. They literally were not going to be able to replace him, and they had just had the sunk cost of trading Gary Trent Jr. for Norman Powell. Powell had all the leverage, and after Gary Trent Jr. and Evan Fournier's deals came out, and it was like, oh, that's the going rate for a shooting guard, $18.5 million per. Norman Powell said, I want that plus an extra year. I want all 5 years. Powell had the leverage. The Blazers gave it to him, and what it ended up costing the Blazers because they chose to move off him relatively quickly was that they didn't get much back in return. That's the difference. That's if you're looking at those two trades, that's the big difference. Caris LeVert making about the same amount of money, a very similar player in terms of production, not exactly the same in style of play, but a two guard who can score. Norman Powell's a two guard who can score and maybe defend a little bit, but doesn't have the handles of LeVert. But very, very similar players for my money, and also for their actual money. But the Pacers end up with a way better deal because of the length of the years, because of the value of a shorter term contract. You get some team control with LeVert as opposed to a long-term 4-year commitment to Norman Powell. I'll say this: Norman Powell's pretty good. In a better context, he could have been better for the Blazers, and I still expected more of a return for Powell than the Blazers got. I still expected that. Now, I said I would wait, and I will wait. I will wait to see where this lands. If the Blazers, Eric Bledsoe, the Blazers play the Orlando Magic on Tuesday evening. This is Tuesday, February 8th show. They play the Magic tonight, if you're listening to this, day of. And Eric Bledsoe has been ruled out of that game. He was ruled out of the previous game. He had not missed a single game or been on injury report for the Clippers. He shows up in Portland, immediately shows up with, inflamed Achilles, and didn't practice today. The Blazers held practice and a little media session to introduce the new players, and Bledsoe did not practice. They're holding him out. And they're very clearly holding him out ahead of the trade deadline because if they can find a suitor. And if they do find a suitor and they get something back for Norman Powell, they flip Norman Powell and it works. Or Eric Bledsoe. I said Norman Powell. If they flip Eric Bledsoe and it works and they get another thing for him, a player who can help or a draft pick or whatever it might be, I will revisit the Norman Powell, Robert Covington swap, and we can talk about it. Whatever they end up getting for CJ, and how that factors in, we can talk about sort of the trade deadline as a whole. But that Norm return just looks so disappointing. The Robert Covington return seems about right. You get back an expiring contract and a second round pick. Sure, that's great. But the Norm return seems really disappointing, and it seems even more disappointing in light of the Caris LeVert trade. And I think that the length of contract explanation helps, but even then, really, like, I think Norman Powell's good. I think he's, like, if you're a longtime listener, I thought it was good before he's a Blazer. I thought it was good with the Blazers. I think he's good now. Like, it's a little bit disappointing. So we'll see what happens next with the Blazers. But I thought that explanation from Hollinger, coupled with my language of you're going to have to talk yourself into a lot of Norman Powell, kind of shows you where things landed with the Blazers. We'll see what happens with Bledsoe at the deadline. We'll see what happens with other players. Certainly CJ isn't the only one who could be traded. Nurk and Larry and others certainly could be on the trade block. We will see what happens, and we'll have you covered right here 5 days a week, free on all platforms, every single weekday, your only daily Trailblazers podcast. Tell your friends about this show, and then come back and join us for more shows later this week. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.